It is my pleasure to welcome our guests this morning, and I know you'll hear certainly more from them this afternoon, particularly if I can just introduce Susan Murray on the front here. Susan will be leading the Good Practice seminar referring to equality and gender issues this afternoon, and I'll give you some more of her details this afternoon, but welcome Susan. And also to Joe Crickson, and Joe will be leading the Good Practice seminar referring to management of health and safety. So welcome Joe, and again we'll hear more about them this afternoon.
Second way that we address health and safety, and I'm sure this will be familiar to virtually all of you, if not all of you, is through standard guidance and regulations. And again, this is not just BSF, this applies to all capital programmes, and I'm sure some of these are old friends to you. BB 98, BB 102, SEN, BB 101, ventilation and so on and so forth. And standard specs and guides for looking at standard layouts and so on. And I'm going to come back to this in a moment, and I want to get a feel for where we need to go with this. I want to test out some of our thinking about how to bring about some revisions in this area. And this will be the first time we've discussed any of this in a sort of semi-public setting, so you can have...
Ofsted are ramping up the whole safeguarding thing, and that spirals into the health and safety. We had another example of a school in Birmingham, and there was a little bit of a scaffolding pole, unfortunately, and it hadn't been taped up, it hadn't had that orange stuff and so on and so forth, and no signs around it saying hazard. It was sticking out a little bit too far, and Ofsted really went to town on the school, and immediately my colleagues in asset management were called up, and we had to send in an emergency scaffolding team to actually change the actual scaffolding to bring it in line. There are so many little traps that schools can fall into now.
Got anything they want to fire up now, or you think of anything as we go through, I'll write them on the board, and then hopefully we'll try and address them as we go through the session. So just a quick thought, why have you come? What do you want to hear about?
5 drills, but quite spread out site, multi-block.
Okay. Fire drills.
Oh sure, safeguarding. CRB checks.
Right, CRB, safeguarding. Clive?
Yeah, it's about monitoring of having policies and things in place for training.
Committees and influence. Very many schools fall down with supply staff.
Yeah.
Especially when they get agency staff in nowadays. The agency staff comes in and just tell them what lessons they've got. We're trying to encourage schools to have a pack. Very, not too big, because they're not going to read it before they go to the first lesson, but give them the key points, and that is actually essential as an employer and as a school to give supply staff and anybody who's coming in the key points about health and safety when they're on site.
One of the biggest things that we suffered within North Somerset was if you're a supply teacher and you've got pupils in your class that have got medical needs, you don't know about it. So how can we then give you that first flag in terms of there are medical needs within your class, and these are the appropriate measures that we have to take. We've introduced a flagging system, it's a colour dot system, and information is within that pack that Trevor was talking about that goes to supply teachers.
And it still surprises me the number of schools I go into where they don't have any semblance of a health and safety committee. And you know that in those institutions there's going to be problems. Having a health and safety committee does address a lot of the difficulties, and it removes the personalisation on the issues. So that is a big thing that I think we need to drive forward, the establishment, how to do it. And because the legal rights, whatever kind of school you work in, this is the beauty of health and safety law as opposed to other policies. That health and safety law is enshrined in law, and it doesn't really matter whether you're working in an academy, a foundation school, or one of the new free schools.
While stress isn't burnout, and while burnout isn't mental illness, both of those things, if sustained over a long period of time, come chronic, then it can lead to mental illness, and again, costs that will have not just to the family, the individual and his family, but work
and in Jerry's presentation, it again came very sharply to me. And if you haven't read the report, the full report on teachers' mental health, I do urge you to read it. And I do urge you actually also to read through the stories of the teachers themselves, our members. And I know that you've heard many of these stories yourself. but they are heart-wrenching stories of teachers whose zeal, whose enthusiasm, whose commitment, whose moral purpose to do the job has actually been seriously undermined, if not squandered, as a result of a failure of the school system as a whole to actually provide appropriate conditions for them to engage in practice.